They say betrayal hurts the most when it comes from
Lena, I'm
someone
gonna
who knows
ruin
your
your
favorite
life.
color,
Everything
your
you own
fears,
belongs to
your
me.
dreams. Because an enemy who hates you from afar can only guess how to destroy you. But an enemy who calls you best friend, she knows where you're weakest. She knows what you love most. And she knows exactly how to take it without ever raising her voice. This is not a story about strangers. This is a story about closeness, about envy that smiled, hugged, and whispered, "I'm happy for you," while secretly praying for your downfall. This is the story of Lena, and the woman who wanted her life badly enough to ruin both of theirs. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Lena had always loved the quiet hum of the weekend mall. It wasn't just a place to shop, it was a rhythm, a gentle pulse of ordinary life that reminded her the world still moved even when her mind was spinning. That Saturday, the air was thick with the scent of fresh pretzels and roasted coffee beans, a mixture that made her stomach rumble and her mood lift slightly. She wandered past the boutiques and kiosks, absent-mindedly scrolling her phone while listening to the chatter around her, her thoughts drifting between work deadlines and what she would cook for dinner. That's when she saw her, Mariah, standing near the entrance of a small jewelry store, carefully adjusting a display, her movements precise, almost deliberate. The first thing Lena noticed was the smile. It was easy, welcoming, like the kind of warmth that made strangers feel safe. Their eyes met for a moment, and Mariah tilted her head slightly, offering a small nod. Lena smiled back, brushing her hair from her face. There was something unassuming about her, but at the same time, something that felt familiar. Not familiar in the way you know someone for years, but familiar in a way that made Lena feel as if she'd been waiting to meet her without even realizing it. "Hi," Mariah said, stepping closer, her voice soft but confident. "I couldn't help noticing you were looking at the silver bracelets. Are you looking for something special?" Lena blinked, slightly taken aback. "Oh, just browsing," she replied, feeling the faint tug of curiosity. Mariah's smile widened, just enough to make Lena feel like she'd been understood before she had even said anything more. "Well, take your time," Mariah said. "I'm here if you need a second opinion." There was a subtle confidence in the way she spoke, a kind of ease that invited conversation without forcing it. Over the next hour, they wandered together through the mall. Lena mentioned she liked caramel lattes, and Mariah immediately suggested the cafe around the corner. "I can get us two," she said. "Caramel, right?" Lena laughed lightly, surprised. "Yeah, how did you know?" Mariah shrugged, casually, almost as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. "Just a lucky guess," she replied. But Lena noticed the precision in the statement, the way her eyes held a faint spark of interest. They sat across from each other, cups warming their hands as steam rose between them. "So, what do you usually do on weekends?" Mariah asked, tilting her head, resting her chin on her hand. Lena told her about her favorite walks near the park, the little art gallery she sometimes visited, the quiet evenings she spent reading on her balcony. Mariah listened intently, nodding, asking subtle questions that made Lena feel understood, remembered. "That gallery sounds amazing," Mariah said. "Do you go there often? I'd love to see it sometime with you." Lena felt a small flutter of comfort, a sense that she had found someone who genuinely wanted to be part of her world. By mid-afternoon, they had moved from shop to shop, laughing over silly window displays, debating whether a scarf was worth buying, and sharing anecdotes from their lives. At one point, Lena dropped her keys near a fountain, and Mariah's hand was there in an instant to catch them. "You're clumsy," Mariah teased gently, and Lena laughed, feeling the ease of someone who could joke with her without judgment. "Thanks for catching them," Lena said, brushing her hair from her face. Mariah just smiled, her eyes tracing Lena's movements as though memorizing them, noting the tilt of her head, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the little quirks that made Lena. Even in the quiet moments, there was an undercurrent of observation. When Lena paused to admire a necklace, Mariah leaned slightly closer, commenting on how it matched Lena's hair, her skin tone, the shape of her hands. "You have such a good eye for details," Lena said, touched by the compliment. Mariah only smiled, a small, almost imperceptible curl of her lips, her gaze steady. As the mall lights began to dim, signaling the end of the day, they found themselves lingering near the escalator. Lena felt a strange sense of reluctance. as if the day had been too perfect, too easy. "I'm really glad I ran into you today," Lena said, smiling sincerely. Mariah mirrored her smile, just slightly too long, and replied softly, "Me too. I have a feeling this is the start of something special." Lena nodded, unaware that the words were chosen carefully, loaded with intention. Walking out of the mall together, under the soft glow of the streetlights, Lena felt a rare sense of companionship. Mariah's presence had been steady, attentive, and comforting, and Lena didn't notice the subtle intensity in her gaze, the way her eyes lingered a fraction too long, the way her mind seemed to catalog every detail of Lena's behavior, her habits, and her smile. The day had been ordinary, yet extraordinary, and as Lena waved goodbye at the curb, she had no idea that this casual encounter, this effortless friendship, was laying the foundation for a chain of events that would alter her life in ways she could never imagine. The days following their first encounter at the mall felt like a slow, steady pull between Lena and Mariah. Texts came regularly. First simple greetings, then shared thoughts about movies, favorite songs, little jokes that only Lena would understand. "I saw this and thought of you," Mariah would write, sending links to cafes Lena had mentioned or articles about books she loved. At first, Lena smiled, charmed by the thoughtfulness. She hadn't realized how starved she was for someone who noticed the small details in her life, someone who remembered her favorite caramel latte, or how she liked her coffee with an extra shot of vanilla. One Wednesday evening, Lena was walking home after work when her phone buzzed. It was Mariah. "Hey, are you free tonight? I found a little spot that makes the best hot chocolate. I thought you might like it." Lena paused, her hand gripping her bag strap. She felt a gentle pull of curiosity, but also comfort. "Sure," she texted back. 15 minutes later, Mariah was there, waiting outside the small cafe, her hair neatly tucked behind one ear, a small smile playing on her lips. "You made it," Mariah said softly. Lena returned the smile. "Of course. You didn't want to go alone, did you?" Mariah laughed, a light, musical sound, and gestured for Lena to follow inside. Over steaming cups of cocoa, the conversation flowed effortlessly. Mariah remembered stories Lena had casually mentioned weeks ago, asking follow-up questions, her gaze never leaving Lena's face. "You mentioned that gallery you like, the one with the abstract paintings. Have you been to the new exhibit yet?" Lena blinked in surprise. "Wait, you remembered that?" Mariah shrugged nonchalantly. "It stuck with me. You have such good taste. I wanted to see what all the fuss was about." Lena laughed softly, feeling a warm sense of connection. She didn't notice the subtle intensity in Mariah's eyes, how each detail was cataloged, stored, observed. Days turned into weeks, and Mariah's attention became routine, a constant undercurrent in Lena's life. She noticed the way Lena preferred the northern side of the park for her walks, the cafes she lingered in, even the songs she hummed when she thought no one was listening. Mariah commented on these things casually, weaving them into conversation with a precision that made Lena feel special, understood, almost admired. One afternoon, as they sat in a sunlit corner of a small bookstore cafe, Lena mentioned feeling stressed about a project at work. "I just can't seem to get it right," she admitted, stirring her tea absently. Mariah leaned closer, voice gentle. "You always do amazing work. Maybe you just need a fresh perspective? I can help if you want." Lena hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that, thanks." As they discussed the project, Mariah asked questions that seemed helpful but were carefully phrased to understand Lena's habits, her routines, and her reactions under pressure. Every sigh, every pause, every small frown was noted. Lena only felt supported, unaware of the way Mariah stored every fragment, every nuance. Even in the smallest gestures, Mariah's presence was precise. She remembered Lena's favorite chocolate bar, bringing it casually when they met. She noticed the way Lena adjusted her scarf or tapped her fingers when deep in thought. "You always do that when you're thinking," Mariah would say softly, and Lena would laugh, slightly embarrassed, but comforted by someone noticing her in such detail. "I guess I do, huh?" she replied. Mariah's eyes would linger, just a fraction too long, but Lena read it as focus, attention, admiration. One rainy evening, Lena had slipped on the slick pavement outside her apartment. Before she even realized it, Mariah's hands were there, steadying her. "You okay?" she asked, her voice calm, warm, and reassuring. Lena nodded, brushing wet hair from her face. Thanks, that was close. Mariah's gaze didn't waver. I'm glad I was here, she said, a faint smile curving her lips. Lena smiled back, feeling a sense of gratitude, a sense that Mariah truly cared. But behind that warmth, there was a rhythm Lena didn't notice, a quiet, persistent attention, a subtle cataloging of everything she did, said, and felt. The way Lena laughed at jokes, the way she frowned when she was frustrated, the books she picked up, the songs she hummed, even the way her hair fell across her shoulders. Everything was observed and stored. It was admiration at first, genuine fascination, but beneath it, seeds of something deeper, something darker, had already begun to take root. By the time Lena realized how integral Mariah had become to her life, it was impossible to imagine weekends, small joys, or even quiet moments without her presence. Mariah had become the lens through which Lena experienced many of her small daily pleasures, from the perfect coffee to the way sunlight fell across a park bench, from the sound of her favorite song playing in a cafe to the way her apartment smelled after baking cookies. Lena trusted her, confided in her, laughed with her, and all the while, Mariah's gaze lingered in ways Lena could never see, cataloging, noting, remembering. The friendship was seamless, effortless, but every effortless thing can have weight, and every weight can bend. And in that gentle, unnoticed way, Mariah's obsession had begun, quiet and patient, waiting for the precise moment to be revealed. Weeks passed, and the warmth of Mariah's attention, once comforting, began to feel heavier, almost inescapable. Lena noticed it first in small ways. Mariah always knew where she would be, sometimes appearing at cafes or stores as if by coincidence. Hey, fancy seeing you here, Mariah would say, smiling innocently, but the precision of the timing was unsettling. Lena laughed it off at first. Wow, you really do show up everywhere I go, she said. Mariah's smile didn't waver. I like knowing what's going on in your day, she replied softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Lena felt flattered at first, but the words lingered longer than intended, carrying a subtle weight she couldn't place. At work, things began to shift. Lena confided in Mariah about a promotion she was considering. I don't know if I should take it, Lena admitted over coffee one afternoon. Mariah leaned in, voice low and earnest. You can do it, Lena. You always excel, but are you sure this won't stress you too much? Lena paused, then laughed nervously. I think I can handle it. Mariah's gaze stayed fixed, studying the slightest tremor in her hand as she sipped her latte. I just don't want you to get hurt, she whispered. There was no hint of threat, yet the precision of her words, her focus, made Lena feel observed, almost fragile in the moment. Even outside work, Mariah's subtle control began to creep in. One evening, Lena mentioned she wanted to redecorate her apartment, trying to find the perfect color scheme for her living room. Mariah suggested a palette, then a furniture arrangement, and even the placement of decorative items. It'll make your mornings feel brighter, she said. Lena, amused, played along. You've really thought this through. Mariah shrugged, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. I just noticed things, that's all. And she did. Every detail Lena had mentioned months ago, every preference, every hesitation, reappeared as guidance carefully framed as kindness. At home, the pattern intensified. Lena would call Mariah about mundane things, a recipe, a haircut, a new playlist, and Mariah would arrive with solutions, suggestions, even small gifts tailored perfectly. A pair of earrings, a notebook, a coffee blend, always thoughtful, always precise. I thought this would brighten your day, Mariah said one rainy afternoon, handing over a small box wrapped in shimmering paper. Lena accepted it, smiling, unaware that each gesture, each gift, was not just generosity but observation, calculation, a weaving of control into friendship. The subtle manipulation grew in tandem with attention. Lena began to feel moments of confusion. Why did Mariah always seem to know when she was upset, or when she had a small victory at work? Did you notice? Lena asked once, smiling at a minor compliment she'd received from a colleague. Mariah's eyes softened. Of course. You deserve every bit of praise, Lena. Lena nodded, heart swelling with gratitude, unaware of the shadow beneath those words, the envy she could not yet see, lying in wait. And then came the first hint of danger. One night, Lena was sleeping when she slipped into a terrible dream she couldn't shake. Hands were braiding her hair, twisting the strands too tight, pulling until it hurt. A voice whispered words she couldn't understand, low, steady, and far too close. Lena jolted awake, gasping. Her scalp burned as if the dream had left bruises behind. She tried to shrug it off, blaming stress. But with Mariah constantly around, the unease didn't fade. It sharpened. It lingered. The nightmares became frequent. In cafes, in stores, on walks, Mariah's voice was always near, her suggestions always timely, her questions carefully placed. "Do you really need another notebook?" Lena asked once, holding one Mariah had bought. Mariah tilted her head, a soft smile curling her lips. "Maybe not, but I thought it might inspire you. You write such beautiful notes. I'd hate for them to be forgotten." Lena smiled, touched, yet somewhere deep, a flicker of discomfort whispered. Every gift, every question, every suggestion. Tiny, subtle threads weaving a bond she could not see unraveling in time. By now, Lena's friends began to notice. "She's always around, huh?" One remarked lightly during a lunch break. "Mariah?" "Yeah, she's dependable," Lena said cautiously, the words tasting odd even as they left her mouth. That night, she replayed the day in her head, the casual advice, the small gifts, the intensity in Mariah's gaze, and a slow, uncomfortable awareness began to creep in. The friendship she once cherished carried a weight she had never signed up for. But she couldn't put it into words, and she couldn't yet see the full scope of what was coming. Evenings at home became the quietest moments of tension. Lena would sit on her sofa, holding a cup of tea, thinking back to Mariah's comments, her gifts, her intense presence. Was it caring? Or something else? A feeling of being observed, measured, cataloged, shadowed in every thought and action, began to creep in, subtle as fog through an open window. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Lena felt the first true pang of fear, not of Mariah now, but of what that obsessive attention might become. Weeks before Lena's birthday, Mariah walked briskly down a narrow, rain-slicked street, the small gift box clutched tightly to her chest. She was nervous, but her nerves were edged with determination. The apartment she approached had seen decades pass, the walls yellowed with age, the smell of damp wood and incense hanging thickly in the air. Candles flickered along the shelves, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch like fingers toward her. From the corner of the room, an elderly woman emerged, her eyes sharp, deep, and unwavering. "You're certain you understand the consequences?" the woman asked, her voice low and deliberate, holding Mariah's gaze as if she could peer straight into her soul. Mariah hesitated for a fraction, then nodded, gripping the box tighter. "I want it to be perfect. She must love it, trust it, never suspect." The old woman's lips pressed together. Every knot, every braid, every thread carries intention. One misstep, and it returns to you. Mariah exhaled sharply and placed the box on the table. She opened it carefully, revealing the delicate hair accessories inside. Tiny braids, glittering ornaments, miniature charms, all exquisite in craftsmanship. She followed the woman's instructions meticulously, whispering strange phrases under her breath, tying threads with precision. "She will wear them. She will trust me. She will never know," Mariah murmured, eyes fixed on the pieces. Hours passed as she worked, each motion measured, deliberate. The candle flames flickered, dancing shadows across the room, and Mariah felt a thrill mingled with dread, knowing what she was sending into Lena's life. When the ritual ended, the box seemed to hum faintly, as if aware of its purpose. Finally, the day arrived. Lena's birthday was bright and ordinary, filled with friends, laughter, and the clatter of casual celebration. Mariah approached with a serene smile, holding the cursed box like any ordinary gift. "Happy birthday, Lena," she said softly, her tone warm and unassuming. Lena's eyes lit up immediately, the excitement of receiving a gift shining through her smile. "Mariah? Oh my gosh, you didn't have to. This is beautiful," she exclaimed, reaching for the shimmering box. Mariah handed it over carefully. "I saw these and thought of you. I knew you'd love them," she said, keeping her voice even calm. Lena untied the ribbon eagerly, her fingers brushing over the smooth paper. Inside, the accessories sparkled, delicate braids, tiny charms, colors that seemed to catch the light in impossible ways. She lifted each piece with delight, running her fingers along the curves, laughter spilling softly from her lips. These are amazing. I love them, Mariah. Thank you so much. Mariah's smile was perfect, her eyes fixed on Lena's every reaction. I'm so glad you like them, she replied, voice soft, almost gentle, but her gaze was sharp, almost predatory in its focus. Lena didn't notice the intensity behind it, the way Mariah's mind was already weaving the threads of control, imagining how each piece would slowly entangle Lena's life. She laughed again, tossing her head, and Mariah noted the small, effortless joy that made her pulse quicken. As the afternoon went on, they chatted casually, Mariah asking about Lena's plans, her work, small daily habits. Did you ever try the new cafe on Main Street? Mariah asked, leaning slightly closer, her voice warm. Lena nodded, smiling. Yes, they have this amazing latte I think you'd love. We should go sometime. Mariah's mind worked silently, noting every detail, storing each habit, each preference. Every laugh, every innocent smile, every word Lena spoke, it was all observed, cataloged, ready to be used. By the time Lena went off to finish unwrapping other gifts, Mariah lingered near the door, her hand brushing against the small box once more, feeling its weight, sensing the purpose now fully set. She whispered softly to herself, almost a prayer, almost a promise. It's done. She will never see it coming. The room seemed to shrink around her, the edges of reality bending slightly, charged with the anticipation of what was to come. Lena's delight, her trust, her unguarded happiness, they were all pieces placed perfectly into the design Mariah had crafted weeks before. Later that night, Mariah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a quiet thrill running through her. She imagined Lena touching each piece, unaware, the subtle changes beginning, the control taking root. Every laugh, every sigh, every glimmer of trust was feeding the plan she had set into motion. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the window, a soft rhythm, almost like applause, as if the universe itself acknowledged the first steps of what was about to unfold. Few days after her birthday, Lena woke to a heaviness she couldn't explain. Her eyelids felt weighted, and every movement required effort she didn't have. The gifts Mariah had given her few days back, the intricate hair ornaments, the shimmering bows, the delicate clips, should have brought joy, but instead, they pressed in on her like a strange, invisible weight. As she walked to the kitchen for coffee, she felt the fog in her mind, the subtle but insistent unease, tightening its grip. Every sound was slightly off, every movement felt delayed, and a cold shiver ran down her spine as she realized her thoughts weren't flowing the way they should. It was then that Mariah arrived. She had called earlier, claiming she wanted to check on her friend. But when she appeared at Lena's door, her smile was warm, almost radiant, her eyes soft with concern. "Hey, you awake?" she asked gently, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation, as if the apartment were her own. Lena forced a smile, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. "Yeah, I'm okay," she murmured, though her voice barely carried. Mariah moved closer, lowering herself onto the couch beside Lena. "You don't look okay," she said, soft and deliberate, leaning just enough that Lena could feel the warmth radiating from her. "I mean it. You seem different. Are you sure you're feeling all right?" Her tone was perfectly balanced, concerned, intimate, but just vague enough that Lena felt compelled to confide in her. Lena hesitated. The fog in her mind made her words stumble. I don't know. I just feel weird. Heavy, maybe. I can't focus. Nothing seems normal," she admitted, looking down at her hands. Mariah reached out slowly, placing her hand over Lena's. The touch was light, careful, reassuring. "I'm here," she whispered. "We'll figure it out together. You don't have to handle this alone." The words, the presence, the warmth, they pulled at Lena in a way that felt almost desperate. I thought it was just stress," Lena said softly, her voice shaking. "But it's more than that. I feel like I'm losing myself." Mariah nodded, eyes never leaving her friends. "I understand," she said. "I've been there before. It's scary, I know, but you're strong, Lena. Stronger than you think. And I'm here for you. Always." Lena's chest tightened. She wanted to believe her. She wanted to trust someone again. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you. Mariah's smile deepened, warm and comforting, and she squeezed Lena's hand gently. You'll never have to find out, she said. I've got you. Every step of the way. For the next hour, Mariah stayed close, asking small questions, listening carefully to every reply. Do you feel dizzy sometimes? Or like your thoughts aren't lining up? She asked casually, her tone soft and almost maternal. Lena nodded, hesitating before answering. Yes, it's like I'm moving, but my mind it's slow. Foggy. Mariah nodded slowly, her eyes shining with empathy. I know exactly what you mean. It can be terrifying when your own brain feels against you, but we'll work through it. Together. They went to the kitchen to make tea. Mariah chopped fruit for Lena's water, talked lightly about a funny incident at work, a shared acquaintance, a minor news story, anything to distract, to calm, to comfort. Lena laughed lightly, for the first time in days, and the sound made Mariah's lips curl into a soft, satisfied smile. The performance was flawless. Every word, every laugh, every hesitation from Lena was being logged, studied, memorized. Every weak moment, every flicker of vulnerability, every small gesture of dependence was a treasure to her. You know, Lena said, staring into her cup, I thought birthdays were supposed to make you happy. I don't even remember enjoying mine. Mariah leaned closer, tilting her head, voice soft, soothing. Lena, happiness isn't always instant. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it comes later. Let it settle in. Let me help it in. They sat there for a long while, Lena speaking in fragments, sharing fears she couldn't even name. Mariah nodded at all the right moments, murmuring comfort, whispering encouragement. You're okay. You're safe. I'm here. Nothing will hurt you when I'm here, she said. And Lena, exhausted and vulnerable, clung to the words like a lifeline. By mid-afternoon, Lena's fog had not lifted, but the warmth of Mariah's presence offered a small reprieve. She leaned back, feeling oddly calm, reassured that she was being watched over, being protected. What she didn't know, could never know in that moment, was that Mariah's comfort was carefully calculated, each soothing word a thread in a larger web. Every tear Lena shed, every fearful glance, every tremor of uncertainty was a piece of information Mariah filed away, planning, anticipating, preparing. The very attention Lena sought for solace was the same attention that had already begun to unravel her life from the inside out. Mariah lingered until the sun began to tilt in the sky, her presence unwavering, her concern unshakable. I'll check on you again later, she said softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from Lena's face. Rest now. I'll be here. Lena nodded, gratitude and trust entwined with a faint, uneasy feeling she couldn't place. Mariah left the apartment, her smile warm, her words lingering in the air like a promise. And just like that, Lena was left alone with the first whispers of chaos creeping through her life. The subtle mistakes, the sudden forgetfulness, the strange exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. She didn't know it yet, but the gift had begun to manifest, and the web Mariah had spun so carefully was already tightening around her. The very friend she leaned on for comfort was the same person quietly orchestrating the unraveling of her world. Lena sat alone after Mariah left, the apartment suddenly too quiet, the walls pressing in as if they were listening. The calm she had felt moments earlier began to thin, like mist under rising heat. Her hands rested on her lap, but they didn't feel like her own. When she tried to stand, her legs hesitated, responding a second too late, and she laughed weakly at herself, brushing it off as exhaustion. Still, the unease returned, sharper now. She glanced toward the table where the gifts sat neatly arranged, catching the light. For a brief second, she felt an urge to move them out of sight, but the thought slipped away as quickly as it came, replaced by a familiar heaviness settling into her chest. A week later, Lena could barely move. It wasn't like normal tiredness, the kind you could sleep off or push through with coffee. This was something heavier, something that sank into her bones and stayed there. Her body felt like it belonged to someone else, like her limbs were filled with wet sand. Even lifting her head from the pillow took effort. Eating became impossible. At first, she tried. She forced down a few bites of toast, a sip of water, half a bowl of soup. But her stomach turned on her, refusing everything. The hunger didn't even feel sharp anymore. It faded into a dull emptiness, like her body was slowly forgetting what it needed to survive. And then her mind began to change. Her thoughts didn't come in clear lines anymore. They drifted in slow, broken pieces, half-formed sentences, unfinished memories, confusion that made her blink at the ceiling for long stretches of time. Sometimes she would stare at the clock and swear it had been minutes, only to realize hours had passed. The cold came next. It started in her hands and feet, creeping upward like something alive. Even when the heater was on, even when she wrapped herself in blankets, Lena couldn't get warm. She shivered constantly, teeth chattering, her skin prickling with a chill that didn't belong in her apartment. Then the smell began. At first, it was subtle, something sour, something stale. Lena noticed it in the corners of her home, like the air itself had started to rot. But she didn't have the strength to do anything about it. Dishes stacked in the sink. Trash piled up. Food spoiled in the fridge. Laundry lay in heaps across the floor. Days blurred together. And the apartment, once warm and tidy, began to feel like it was decaying around her. The neighbors noticed before she did. She heard faint knocks on her door, hesitant at first, then more insistent. A muffled voice once called out, "Everything okay in there?" But Lena couldn't answer. She couldn't even make herself stand long enough to reach the door. She just lay there, staring, breathing shallowly, listening to the sound of her own life slipping away. Even Mariah stopped coming. At first, Mariah had been constant, checking in, hovering, pretending to care. But when Lena's apartment became too messy, too smelly, too broken, the visits stopped. No more tea. No more soft concern. No more "I'm here." Just silence. Lena realized it slowly, like waking up in a dark room. She had been abandoned. And somehow, that realization hurt more than the curse itself. Months passed. 6 months. By then, Lena had learned how to exist in fragments. She moved only when she had to. She ate only when her body demanded it. Her apartment felt like a tomb, dim, stale, and heavy with the smell of neglect. One afternoon, she caught her reflection in the mirror, and she froze. The woman staring back at her didn't look like Lena. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes dull and rimmed with darkness. Her hair was thin, tangled, lifeless. Her skin looked ashy, drained of light. Even her posture felt wrong, like she had shrunk inside herself. Lena lifted a trembling hand and touched her own face. And she didn't recognize who she was touching. Panic surged in her chest, sudden and sharp. She grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and scrolled until she found Mariah's name. She hit call. Once. Twice. 3 times. No answer. Lena tried again later. Then again the next day. Nothing. Not even a text. Not even a cold rejection. Just silence, as if Lena had never existed at all. And that was when something inside her cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet break, like a thread snapping in the dark. One evening, Lena forced herself up. Her body protested, trembling, but she pushed through it. She reached for her coat, fingers clumsy as she slipped it on. The fabric felt too heavy on her shoulders, but she didn't stop. She didn't even know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't stay in that apartment another night. Not like this. Not as that hollow thing in the mirror. She stepped outside into the cold air, and the city lights blurred in her vision. Her breath came out in weak clouds, and her legs carried her forward as if on instinct. She walked block after block, eyes unfocused, watching her reflection ripple in dark windows. "I just wanted to stop," she whispered to no one. That was when a hand closed firmly around her wrist. Lena startled, spinning around, her heart racing, ready to protest, but the words caught in her throat. The woman standing before her was older, her face lined, her eyes clear and steady. "You don't want to go where you're headed," the woman said quietly. Lena tried to pull away. "Please," she muttered, assuming the worst. "I don't have anything." The woman shook her head. "I didn't stop you for money. I stopped you because you're being harmed." Lena's breath came fast. "I don't know you," she said. "You're wrong." The woman didn't flinch. "The gift in your home," she said, lowering her voice. "It carries harm. It's feeding on you. Burn it. All of it. Tonight." Lena felt anger rise, mixed with fear. "It's from my best friend," she snapped. "She wouldn't hurt me." The woman's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "Not all harm comes from enemies. Some comes wrapped in care. Go home. Do what I said. Then sleep." Before Lena could argue again, the woman released her hand and turned away, disappearing into the passing crowd. Lena stood there for a long moment, heart pounding, rain beginning to speckle her coat. She replayed the words over and over as she walked home, every step heavier than the last. Inside her apartment, she stared at the gifts for a long time, her mind split between doubt and desperation. Finally, with shaking hands, she gathered them, striking a match with more force than she meant to. As the flames took hold, something inside her loosened. She didn't understand it, couldn't explain it, but when she finally lay down that night, sleep came fast and deep. And for the first time since her birthday, Lena dreamed of lightness, of breathing freely. When Lena woke the next morning, the change was subtle but undeniable. The heaviness that had pressed on her chest like a physical weight was no longer there. Her limbs moved when she asked them to. Her thoughts, once tangled and slow, felt clearer, as though a window had been opened somewhere inside her. She sat up in bed and waited for the familiar fog to roll back in, but it didn't. Instead, there was quiet. Not the suffocating quiet from the day before, but a calm stillness that felt earned, fragile, and real. She exhaled slowly, surprised by how easily the breath came. She moved through the apartment cautiously, half expecting the unease to return. The table where the gifts had sat was empty now, the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air. Rather than frightening her, it grounded her. She made tea again, this time noticing the warmth in her hands, the taste on her tongue. Hours passed, and with each one, something inside her seemed to reconnect. By afternoon, she found herself humming without realizing it, the sound startling her into a quiet smile. It felt like meeting herself again after a long absence. Still, questions lingered. The woman's words echoed in her mind, not with fear now, but with clarity. On impulse, Lena stepped back outside and walked the same streets she had wandered the night before, searching faces, corners, doorways. She didn't know what she hoped to find, but the woman was gone. No sign, no trace, just movement, noise, and ordinary life continuing on. As Lena turned back toward home, she understood that the warning had been given for a reason, and that some help arrives only once. A few weeks later, Mariah could no longer tell whether it was morning or night unless she checked the clock on her phone. Time had lost its shape. Sleep came in broken fragments, short and restless, filled with jolts that left her gasping awake. When she opened her eyes, the room felt unfamiliar, as if she had woken up in someone else's life. The walls looked closer than before, the ceiling lower, the air heavier. Her chest ached constantly, not sharp enough to scream, but deep enough to never leave. She tried to stand one morning and nearly fell. Her legs wobbled beneath her, weak, untrustworthy. "Get it together," she muttered to herself, gripping the edge of the table. Her voice sounded strange to her ears, thinner, smaller. The mirror across the room caught her reflection, and she froze. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles. Her hair hung lifeless around her face. This wasn't the woman who had walked into Lena's life with confidence and control. This was someone unraveling. Her phone buzzed. She snatched it up instinctively, heart leaping, hope flaring despite everything. But it wasn't Lena. It was a reminder. Rent overdue. Another message followed. Final notice. Mariah's hands began to shake so badly she dropped the phone onto the floor. "No, no, please," she whispered, as if the empty room could negotiate on her behalf. She tried calling the landlord, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I just need a little more time. I'm dealing with something. I'll pay, I promise." There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh heavy with indifference. "You've had time. You're done here." The call ended. Something inside her cracked. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, knees pulled tight to her chest, rocking slightly. Her thoughts turned against her, relentless and cruel. You did this. You wanted control. You wanted her weak. The witch's warning replayed in her mind, no longer distant or abstract, but sharp and immediate. Everything she had dismissed was happening exactly as promised. She tried call Lena, all her calls, straight to silence. She sent message after message, the words becoming more frantic, less coherent. "Please talk to me. I didn't mean it. I'm not okay." She stared at the screen until her eyes burned, waiting for the dots that never appeared. Lena's absence felt louder than shouting. It filled every corner of her mind. The apartment deteriorated faster than she could comprehend. Trash piled up. Food spoiled untouched. She meant to clean, meant to fix things, but every attempt left her exhausted, breathless, overwhelmed. Even the simplest task, washing a cup, folding a shirt, felt impossible. Days passed where she barely ate. When she did, the food tasted like nothing. Her body felt foreign, heavy, unreliable. One afternoon, she stumbled outside, driven by panic and a last thread of hope. She remembered the woman, the one who had warned her, the one who had told her the cost. She retraced her steps through the streets, heart pounding, whispering under her breath, "Please, please still be there." When she reached the place, her chest dropped. The house stood quiet and hollow. No movement, no presence. She knocked once, then harder, then again, her voice breaking as she called out, "I need help. I know I was wrong. Please." Nothing answered her, not even an echo. Mariah collapsed onto the steps, sobbing openly now, no longer caring who saw. Her body shook violently, the sound tearing out of her in raw, broken cries. "I can't fix this," she gasped. "I can't stop it." The realization settled in with brutal clarity. She had been warned, and she had chosen to ignore it. Now there was no one left to save her. Days later, eviction followed exactly as promised. She dragged her belongings out in silence, eyes down, avoiding the looks of neighbors who watched with quiet curiosity. Each step felt like humiliation carved into her bones. Her phone buzzed again while she sat on the curb, surrounded by boxes. A notification from a mutual friend flashed on the screen. She hesitated, then opened it. A picture loaded slowly. Lena, smiling, alive, light in her eyes. Mariah let out a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a cry. She dropped the phone and pressed her palms to her face, rocking as the weight of it all finally crushed her. "She's free," she whispered hoarsely. "And I'm not." That was when she understood. The suffering wasn't temporary. This wasn't fear meant to scare her into regret. This was the consequence she had been promised. Alone, unanswered, trapped inside the very chaos she had tried to give to someone else. And no matter how much she cried, no matter how hard she begged, there was no one left to hear her. A few days later, Mariah's desperation had reached its peak. She had cleaned herself up as best as she could, though the disarray of her life clung to her like a shadow. Her footsteps echoed anxiously along the hallway of Lena's building as she rang the buzzer one more time. She wasn't sure what she hoped for anymore: mercy, acceptance, any sign that her former friend might still acknowledge her existence. The door opened slowly, and Lena stood there. She looked tired, but there was a quiet strength in her posture, a calm certainty that Mariah hadn't felt in weeks. "Mariah," Lena said, voice steady but soft, "come in. We need to talk." Mariah stumbled over her words, relief and fear mingling in her voice. "Lena, I thank you. I need you to know I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't mean to hurt you." Lena held up a hand, cutting her off gently. "I know, Mariah. I know you're sorry." She motioned to the couch. "Sit, please." Mariah collapsed into the seat, shoulders trembling, head bowed. She could barely meet Lena's eyes. I was selfish. I tried to control you, to manipulate things. And I destroyed so much. I've lost everything, Lena. My home, my friends, myself. Please, I don't want to lose you too. Can we fix this?" Lena's gaze softened, but there was no warmth, only clarity. "Mariah, I forgive you. Truly. What you did, it hurt me deeply, but I know now that holding on to anger won't help either of us." She paused, letting the words hang in the quiet room. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." Tears welled in Mariah's eyes. "So you're not angry?" "I'm not angry," Lena said gently. "But forgiveness doesn't mean friendship. I can forgive you, Mariah, because holding on to that pain would hurt me more. But I can't. I can't be friends with someone who tried to ruin my life. Not anymore." Mariah choked back a sob, her hands clutching the edges of the couch. I understand. I deserve this. I don't know how to live without you. I've leaned on you for everything." Lena reached forward, resting a hand lightly on Mariah's. "You'll find your way, Mariah. You'll have to rebuild. Learn to trust yourself, instead of trying to control others. That's how you start." "But I don't know if I can," Mariah whispered, her voice breaking. I've been lost. Everything is falling apart. I know, Lena said softly. And that's your journey now. You'll have to face it the way I faced you. Alone doesn't have to mean hopeless, Mariah. You have to live with what you've done and learn from it. That's the only way forward. Mariah buried her face in her hands, silent for a long moment. Finally, she looked up, her eyes red but clear. I'm so sorry, Lena. I really am. I believe you, Lena said, her voice calm, final. And that's enough. But I can't go back. I won't. I hope you understand. Mariah nodded, a shiver of acceptance running through her. She rose slowly, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. I understand. I'll leave you now. Thank you for hearing me, even this far. Lena watched her go, her heart heavy but steady. She closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, letting out a slow breath. She had forgiven, but boundaries remained. She had survived, untangled herself from manipulation, and learned that some relationships, no matter how dear once, could never return to what they were. Outside, Mariah stood in the hallway, her hands trembling. The city's noise pressed in around her, but it was no longer the life she had controlled. It was a world she had to navigate alone. She had been forgiven, but the freedom she had sought at Lena's expense was gone. Now, all that remained was the bitter, intense task of rebuilding herself from the wreckage she had made. And in that quiet, resolute space, Lena moved on. Her life, fragile but hers, stretched forward. Forgiveness had freed her from hatred, but her choice to remain apart had preserved her. What would you have done if you were in Lena's shoes? Would you have had the strength to forgive but still protect yourself, or would you have let fear take over? And if you were Mariah, could you have resisted letting envy control your choices, or would you have fallen into the same trap? And the most mysterious question of all, who do you think the old lady really was? A guardian? A witch? Or something else entirely, watching from the shadows, only appearing when it mattered most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't hold back. Every opinion matters. And if you want to uncover more stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a twist that could change everything you think you know.